All right, guys, we'll be getting started here shortly. Sorry about that. I'm about a minute behind. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. But we'll get started here shortly. Yes, we are live, Grey Walker. And we'll be getting started here shortly. Thank you. Can never tell sometimes with the streaming software if I'm doing it right. If you guys are just loading in, thank you. Give me just a few minutes here, and we'll get started. More like a few moments, not a few minutes. You know what I mean. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First off, just want to make note here real quick before we get into this. This system has caused a lot of initialization errors with the Euro early on. So as of right now, the European is performing fine. But anybody that was following this storm, I would say just 2 days ago, even a day ago, it was having issues with this feature that was to the east of the storm when it was down near this region right here, which if you look a little closer, I'll zoom in, right around Colombia, Venezuela. That was causing a convective blob, as I've heard it being referred to, popping up to the east, causing models a little issue with steering, especially the Euro. Now that feature is gone, we've moved into an area where is a little bit of a normal latitude for a hurricane, because Matthew initialized in a very southerly area that is not typical. Now that it's moved into a more common region for a hurricane, if you will, models have picked up on the track much better. And one of the first things that I have noticed is you will see Haiti here, which is, I don't know if you guys can actually see it here. There we go. But you can see in this region right here, Western Haiti is really going to get the brunt of this. I've actually already seen reports of some casualties, unfortunately. There are some very economically poor-stricken areas that I'm sure have shantyvilles. Those are unfortunately going to be decimated by the storm. So I hope that the nation, in Western Haiti, they can get people the heck out and find shelter where it's safer. So thoughts and with those people, I hope the best, and I hope that this takes a track right in between Jamaica and Haiti and doesn't steer to the north-northeast as modeled. So outside of that, and where it currently is, it's right about the 75th parallel here, heading north-northeast. It will wobble back and forth. It's not going to be a perfectly straight line or a tangent, if you will, like the models show. You're going to have some wobble, and that's normal for hurricanes. But what it's modeled to do over the next 24 hours is make its way here across western Haiti, right over the eastern tip of Cuba, and then begin to make its way north-northwest towards the Bahamas. Next thing we're going to show you here real quick, and actually I'm going to put this way at the end. Apologize for that. But Matthew is now the longest-lived Cat 4 hurricane in the Eastern Caribbean. That's notable because, and I think it's mainly due in large to where it initialized here in, just north of Colombia, Venezuela. But it really took a long time for it to gain enough convective energy to become a tropical storm. But once it hit that Category 1 status on, I believe it was late Friday, this thing exploded into a Category 4 in no time. And it has really sustained since. So that is a very interesting factoid that I want to throw that in there. And that's something that we should consider with the storm. It is a bit anomalous. We don't know too much about storms that can maintain that status for that long. And guys, I will get to your questions here in a little bit, Gray Walker. Don't worry, I have not missed them. I just want to get through this here initially, and we'll go through that. The next thing I want to point out is there has been a Western trend in models all throughout today. This was something that I kind of saw hinted at because of those initialization errors by the Euro. Now, I'm not going to totally discount all of the model runs. That's not good practice, if you will. But one of the things I did do is I went and looked at the European ensemble runs, which ones initialized correctly versus which ones initialized, I would say, incorrectly or off of what the actual storm was currently at. So when I say initialization error, I mean the European says that it's at a certain strength when the model run starts, when in actuality it's actually much higher, much stronger of a storm. Okay, and I took those runs that initialized correctly for the European ensemble versus the ones that were incorrect, and plugged them into this, and I noticed that a lot of the members that initialized correctly steered significantly west, as indicated here. Let me get a little bit closer. Steered pretty far west, and the ones that were incorrectly initialized, they streamed to the east. So 10% of them, I will throw this in there, that initialized correctly did go to the east. But the rest, 90%, they came west, which was indicated here. And this is from last night's Euro, not today's, but last night's Euro. So I found that to be very interesting. And I was looking at this data this morning. And then that's when I figured that, models have to be seeing the same thing here in the run throughout the day. And sure enough, that's definitely what happened. So the UK Met, which I consider to be a fairly good model, it tends to follow the European pretty closely. It actually jumped the gun first before the Euro. And as you can see, it's tracked a lot of its members west. Versus before, they were mainly clumped in this region right here. They have moved themselves over to the west. So that's worthy of note. And that caused the National Hurricane Center and the NOAA to actually shift their cone west. And as you can see, for the first time since Matthew has been named, you have a cone that has significantly shifted into the states from Florida, Georgia, South Carolina into North Carolina. So I think that's significant because they are admitting at this point that the East Coast within the next 4 to 5 days will have impacts of a major hurricane. Now, whether or not this cone of uncertainty is going to verify exactly down the center, that's to be said. We are not certain at this point. But I will say that this is a significant shift in one day, because if you saw the previous advisory, the center of the cone was more in this area right here, right where it says 2 p.m. That's about a 150 to a 200 mile shift west with just one series of model runs. So that is concerning, to say the least. And as you can see here, it shows a major hurricane making its way through, as we discussed, and then making that north-northwest turn. And this, guys, I think this is what really concerns me, is this north-northwest, or northwest turn rather, is getting eerily close to the Florida coast. And we'll get a little bit more into that, but we're talking about areas from Miami all the way up the east coast of Florida, seeing major flooding, beach erosion, etc. from this, possibly getting captured. And as you can see, a major hurricane status as well. So the next thing I will show you here is this was tracks from different models, excuse me, that was just 12 hours ago. Okay, so majority, as you can see, are out to sea. You have some that kind of clip the Outer Banks. You have this outlier here that goes straight into Charleston area. But again, most are out to sea. 6 hours later, you can see there is a significant shift west, right? So this is 6 hours later. They're saying, oh, okay, well, actually now, based on the latest modeling data, it looks like there is more of a shift west. And the next here, this is the GFS ensemble from the most recent run. And as you can see, this continues to tick west, right? Starts here, trend west, trend west. I'll do it one more time so you guys can see it. Starts here 12 hours ago, 6 hours later, 3 hours later. So there is a significant trend west with the ensemble and with the operational runs of many different models. And I bring up the GFS for a reason, because I think at this point, it's handled the actual storm itself a little bit better than the Euro. The Euro has kind of wish-washed back and forth on this. But at the same time, there are some upper level dynamics that I think the Euro has actually got a little bit better idea on that the GFS doesn't, right? So right now, as I see it, the path of the storm, I would tend to lean toward the GFS right now, but we're going to get into here with the European. I think it's got some of the upper level stuff figured out more so than the GFS, but we'll get to that here in a minute. And this is just to reiterate the shift, guys. This is someone I follow on Twitter, another meteorologist, and he states here and he shows, look, the ensembles are coming west. This is something for us to continue to watch, and this is over the course of the last 12 hours. So why is it giving us this western trend? Like what happened in the last 12 hours that models weren't seeing before that they are now? Well, I think the biggest thing is that the ridge that was first modeled a few days ago out over the central Atlantic is beginning to strengthen per model run. This is significant because, as I have outlined here with this maroon line that's in bold here, this is essentially pushing the system further to the coast versus this trough, which you see over here, right? See where this 570 is? That's over North Texas. That's a trough, which is essentially a movement of a weather system moving its way across the United States. This feature was supposed to kick this out to sea with no issues. But now that this ridge has started to show up in many of the models, this doesn't give the hurricane anywhere else to go but a northwestern direction. Now, as the days progress, as we get closer to Wednesday I think is a key day for this system, as I've been talking with some other people with. We will see if this ridge continues to strengthen. If it does, if it continues to strengthen and the trough here, we'll talk about in just a second, has some other changes, I think we're going to see a near Florida landfall if that trend continues. If the ridge itself here continues to, I would say, weaken or maybe not strengthen as much, then the probability of this going out to sea continues to rise, right? I don't think we'll see landfall if this ridge stays the same. But as I have said a billion times before, it feels like, trend is your friend in weather. And right now, the trend is an eastern ridge buildup and a sharper trough versus a flat trough. And I'll talk about that in just a second here as well. So I bring this slide up because, look, let's just say for a second that this decides to go out to sea like the GFS has modeled, right? Because scraping the coast the entire time, but then going out to sea is modeled. This will have a significant impact on the coast. Anyone from Fort Lauderdale, I would say, all the way up to the Outer Banks, you could see significant flooding, beach erosion, even without a direct landfall. So that's something that needs to be understood because the actual pace of this storm is very slow. It has been modeled slow. It's quickening its pace somewhat, but this is a plodding system, as it has been since the moment it was conceived, all right, out over the northern Columbia. So bottom line is, regardless of out to sea track or along the coast track, there will be coastal impacts from Fort Lauderdale all the way up through Charleston, all the way through Myrtle, and up through the Outer Banks as well. So keep that in mind. And to talk about the trough, right? So that trough and the ridge, which are going to be steering the storm. Now the ridge, this area that you see here in red, the trough, which shows up on a different model run, you see here, that's this bowing into the central United States, right? Now I need to back off and show you this here for a second because I need to see each model run. I can take a look at it here for just a second. Okay, so based on this, the Euro is this solution right here, the one that has the most southerly point for the hurricane at this point in the model. That means that it's having the system come in slower. That is key. The slower the system moves in, the more that it will deepen or strengthen. Okay, and as you can see, the European is the most amped up of all the models right now, coming up along the coast. The Euro tends to do that with systems. Don't take that for gospel that we're going to have a 913 millibar Cat 5 off the coast of Florida. Although possible, it's unlikely. So this is going to be in the category 4 range. But as you see the European here, it shows that this hurricane is going to be pretty juiced. But notice right here what the Euro shows. And you'll see it right now, right? See, not as much blue. Let me cycle it through again. Not as much blue here in the Central Plains. That means it's thinking of more of a flat trough versus a sharp trough, which the GFS shows, which is right here. The GFS has a very deep and sharp trough. Why is that? Well, the GFS is saying, look, I don't think this trough is going to be as broad. I think it's going to be more of a feature that's a sharper feature across the Central Plains. And what does that mean then for the GFS? Well, the GFS is saying this trough is not going to kick out the storm out to sea. It's going to allow this system to come scraping up that Carolina coast and right up off the Outer Banks and possibly even over Virginia Beach. and it won't break down that ridge, right? Whereas the Euro, which again is modeled right here, it's saying, oh, it's going to be a flatter trough, which is essentially going to allow this trough to kick out the system out to sea, and that ridge won't be as strong because of it. So I think that's interesting to bring up because you have two camps right now with this system. You have the GFS that says, okay, we're going to scrape the coast as according to this, right? And we're going to move at a pretty decent rate, but at the same time cause massive amounts of damage from Florida, Fort Lauderdale area, all the way up South Carolina along the North Carolina, in South Carolina coasts. That's significant. But the European model is thinking of a much sharper turn. And forgive me here for a second, I might have to pull that up. But the European model is not thinking the same. The European has more of this idea right here, which I'll go to. It's thinking of up the coast, right? And you can see many members here along the Florida coast, which is concerning because it was not like that just 12 hours ago. So it's showing many members from the ensemble going out over the Florida coast. But then it wants to take this hard right out to sea. And I think that's significant because that is then telling me that it thinks the trough is going to kick it out. But unfortunately, that ridge that would break down would not cause the storm to have any interaction, according to the path that it's been showing here in the past, that it would suddenly just kick out over the ocean. And I say unfortunately because the Euro right now has been windshield wipering back and forth, east to west, and now coming more west and west, more so than I think I've ever seen it try to model a major East Coast system within 4 to 5 days. I haven't seen that happen. And it has me a little speechless because honestly, I don't understand the full feature of the trough kicking it out to sea so easily when this ridge continues to build to the east. So what I am saying essentially is I think right now that the GFS model has a little bit of a better idea with that trough in the short term. In the long term, because of how the European interprets data, I think it does a little better with modeling upper dynamics. So I'm kind of at this crossroads right now where it's like I got to choose a camp because they're both two very different solutions. So instead of having to choose between one or the other, I'm going to go with the trends right now. And the trend is this model, the European, came west 200 miles at one point, but around 120 to 150 miles its last run. And that is significant because it moved towards the other models, which all indicated the same thing. So if we go back here and we look at these model shifts, it's important to note that it is doing this because of that ridge that's going to be out over the central Atlantic. And I think that is the most important feature of all right now. If it continues to build and strengthen, it won't matter how flat or how sharp that trough is that comes out over the west coast towards the east coast. It will matter much more how strong that ridge is to the east and would bring it close to the coast. And the other thing that is concerning, and I'll bring this back up here for a second, is if this ridge continues to build out here to the east, there is a chance that this thing could get captured in towards the Florida coast and make landfall in somewhere in central to northern Florida if the trend continues with this ridge building. And I think the fact that you see so many members, right, in this Cyan area go into Florida, and going back to my original thoughts here, where the correctly initialized European ensembles, which in this case are referred to as high probability clusters, bring it into eastern Florida. I'm going by the trends here, and the trends are a little disturbing for the southeast right now. So, that being said, there's still a lot of uncertainty with this system. Tomorrow, we could be having a totally different conversation based on data. But again, I'm a true believer in trends. That is, in many cases, with large systems, with the windshield wipering back and forth of these model runs, it's really the only thing you have to hold on to that's telling, because you can't take each model run as gospel, if you will. Because if it does get it right 5 days out, it was just lucky with the overall track. It's the trend that matters. That I truly believe. So, for right now, just keep your eyes on it. If you have anybody in these areas from Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, all the way up to the Outer Banks, Southeast Virginia, keep your eyes on it. It's something to be very concerned with at this time, especially if you have property and have a plan. If you have a local evacuation code, know what it is, know where you need to be, because this is an event that can happen in the next 4 to 5 days. We're talking Saturday morning, so not something 10 days away. Okay. All right, so we got a little bit of chatter here. I'm gonna move to some questions. Let's see here real quick. What's causing the storm to move so slowly? So Matthew has actually done something called eye wall replacement multiple times already. I think we're on its third time. And that can cause the system to slow down a bit, cause a wobble, right? Which will go back here, and you can actually see it on this loop. You see how it appears that it's like wiggling? Well, it's actually cycling very tightly, right? And it kind of wobbles. That happens when you have eye wall replacement, especially. So that can slow down track, but it's just a feature that is with this storm. There's no necessary reason why it's slower. It's in an area with low shear. There's not much steering it down here, so it's just kind of plodding away, as if you'd walk on a beach and you have nowhere to go. If you look back at your footprints, you can see you're not really going in one straight line. You're kind of meandering around, and that's what this is doing right now. So, yes, this is a Windows PC. Thank you. I do use Mac, but I am definitely a Windows fan. Wilmington, North Carolina, Cat 3. I mean, at this point, it's a wait and see. I really am hoping for tracks to move out east, to go out to sea. But again, I'm concerned about that eastern ridge that is showing up as a feature out in this area. And you can actually see it here with this defined line. Actually, no, that's precipitation. I apologize. But find another graphic here. Go over. Again, this is the ridge right here that is continuing to build. So I can't tell you if a hurricane's ever split in two. And I don't know how that really applies to here, but if you guys were referring to that convective blob that was east of the storm, that was not a hurricane. So you're good. Let's see. Western North Carolina, you're looking at rainfall. If there were a direct landfall into South Carolina and it tracked north, you definitely get quite a bit of rain. So we're here to see. All right. Oh, and by the way, a little note. I see someone said that it's very nice of Europe to let us use their meteorological tools. This is a paid for. This is a subscription that you have to pay for to access a lot of those models. So they're making quite a bit of money on it, and it's actually funded by like 20 countries across Europe. So it's pretty neat. So don't see any questions here. If you guys have any other questions, go ahead and shoot them over. I really don't think there's too much else to cover with this. Matthew, it continues to grow. Its precipitation shield, right, which is this region all around that's modeled in red, continues to expand. It was a little more condensed in the southern part of the Caribbean. Now it's starting to expand as it moves into areas that are less restricted by land masses, and it won't do much weakening when it does make landfall. It looks like in western Haiti and eastern Cuba, and that's actually a good thing to bring up that I didn't before. So you see here, it shows that the National Hurricane Center is saying, hey, look, we think this is going to be a major. That's what the M stands for, which is a category 4 or above. And these are all warned areas. Interesting to note that before they had it weakening when it went to Bermuda, and now they don't have it weakening. So the reason for that is these waters that are off of eastern Florida all the way down to the southern tip, they're around 30 to 32 Celsius in many areas, which can easily sustain a category 4 or 5 storm. Okay. Some of the biggest unknowns that will affect Matthew's track. I think I talked about it earlier, and again, this is the big unknown right now is which trough are we going to see, and how strong will this ridge be here. And to make this a little easier, we'll go back here, and I'll zoom out. Here's the trough out over here. Here's the ridge. If this ridge overpowers and continues to build, we will see an East Coast landfall. If it doesn't strengthen as much and the trough comes over a lot flatter, and it allows it to kick it out to sea, then you'll see movement out to sea with the system. We'll see here. Now, Gray was asking, since it moved west within 24 hours, do you see it moving back east? It's all dependent upon that trough. If that trough overpowers the ridge, yes, I could see it doing that. But the trend right now is that the ridge to the east, again, this maroon line in this area, that continues to build. If that continues to happen and we see that feature dominate the eastern seaboard and it continues to push that hurricane over towards the coast, we're going to see an East Coast landfall or possibly scrape all the way up the coastline. I'm going to check the Facebook page real quick to see if anybody has any other questions. Good deal. Okay. All right, guys. Well, listen, I think we've covered it all for the first one. If you guys have any other questions, go ahead and shoot them over. But 3 things before I close this out. Number 1, all models have trended west, some significantly in the last 24 hours. Some as many as 250 miles. So that is a trend west. 2, Matthew will not weaken that much as it moves over the Bahamas. It will continue its intensity in a northwest track, and according to some models, even more west-northwest, or rather northwest closer to Florida coast than previously expected. And last but not least, it's the battle of the trough versus the ridge. The ridge is stronger, brings it towards the coast. If the trough flattens and it's not as steep or sharp, and it's more broad across the U.S., then that will kick it out to sea. So that's the biggest tell right now with this system, and the trend is that the ridge is strengthening. Nick is asking, when will we know if it makes an impact in the Northeast? The models seem to all suggest that it's way offshore. We're not going to know that until, I would say, Thursday, to be honest, because the first part we need to figure out is, what is this going to do to the Southeast? Where, if it will make landfall, will it go? And then what will the interacting features be? And there's actually one thing I forgot to cover, and I'm glad you brought this up, because let's say, for example, that, again, here's Matthew making its way northwest. And yes, my name is Matthew. And no, I'm not excited that this storm could be affecting the U.S. It's just strange coincidence. But anyhow, all the Matthews out there probably hoping the same thing. Please don't be bad. But again, this thing will continue to make its way up the southeast coast. So the ridge is going to steer it that way. But if, for some reason, let's just throw this hypothetical out there, it decides to come out to sea a little bit, right? And it kind of follows that scrape, but then out to sea. There is a chance that this system could interact with the trough, because the trough is over here, over the Midwest, right? It's over in this area. That trough could be over in this region as it were to make its way out to sea. And if the trough were to interact with this low pressure system, the hurricane, it could cause a recurve back into the United States. But that is too far out to even speculate right now, because again, there's so many other things that have to happen first. That is a Sandy-like scenario, right, where there was a upper low that actually was over the U.S. that helped pull in Sandy. Nothing in terms of the size of the storm. Sandy was one heck of a beast as it made it on shore. It was not even a Category 1 extratropical storm, but it packed a punch nonetheless. But my point is that recapture is the only feature it could possibly share if that trough were to capture it. So that is something we need to look for. Probably not until Thursday, but we'll know something like that, because we wouldn't be talking about a northeast impact until late Sunday, Monday, even to Tuesday. And I think that's pretty much it. If you guys, again, have any other questions, please visit my Facebook page. Reach out, let me know. I have many people private messaging me. That's fine. I would rather see a question where everyone can see it on the page and possibly answer someone else's same questions, but feel free to reach out at any time. And thanks for tuning in. You guys have a good one. Thank you.